houseplants for a living. This is what different color spots mean on your fiddle leaf fig. First, let's start with red spots. These tiny little red spots are called edema. This actually can happen to humans as well, and it's caused by trapped excess fluid. Doesn't necessarily mean you got full-blown root rot. We regret to inform you that if you've got dark black spots like this, you might have root rot. But if they're lighter brown spots like this, it might just be a little thirsty. However, all these spots are like scars, so even if you have resolved the problem, they're not going to go away. So don't think that because you have them, you're still doing a bad job.
Hey plant peeps, just wanted to give you some care tips for your penis cactus.
Now this little guy is pretty happy. This little guy, not so much. So this particular variety does a great job of showing you when it's thirsty.
And like most cactus, these are summer growers. So in wintertime, they might be cold and a little bit wrinkled, and it's hard for them to grow. See what I did there? So take a look at your penis cactus, and if it looks a little bit wrinkled, give it a nice drink. Soon you'll have more than just a grower. You'll have a shower.
Overwatering your houseplants, part 5. 2 really good rules of thumb to live by to help prevent overwatering. Number 1, it is almost always easier to save a thirsty plant rather than a plant that's rotted. And number 2, always check the soil moisture.
Oh no! You repotted your plant and now its leaves are droopy and yellow! This is called transplant shock. Transplant shock happens when your roots are damaged during repotting. Our plant's root systems are composed of all these different types of roots with all these fine, delicate little root hairs. When these delicate root hairs are missing, the plant isn't able to uptake as much water as it was previously. This is what leads to yellow, droopy leaves.
Forget about all the fancy plant gadgets. Here are the 3 things every plant parent should have. Extra all-purpose potting mix for repotting and replenishing. Neem oil for broad spectrum pest control and cleaning your plants. And a spray bottle, aka my favorite low-tech way to humidify.
Okay guys, we're doing it. This is how to care for your string of pearls. First, let's talk about lighting. The assumption that string of pearls need high direct light all day long is actually really untrue. These guys actually thrive in bright indirect light. Mine hangs out in my window all day long, and because of my building, this is as bright as it gets. And with regards to lighting, you want to make sure that that indirect light is hitting the top of the plant. I personally think watering is where people go wrong with this plant. It's been several months since I've actually watered this one, and it is pushing out new growth like crazy right now. It's about how quickly they can develop root rot. They actually bounce back easier when underwatered. When you're new, don't be afraid to let the pearls get a little bit puckered or sad looking before you water them, and I personally bottom water. That'll give you a better idea of how often you need to be watering it. Good luck!
Here's how you can be successful with the snake plant, otherwise known as the mother-in-law's tongue or Sansevieria. Don't make fun of my talking. I got Invisalign yesterday. Anyway, let's start out with light. They prefer to have bright light. They'll grow much faster, and they will actually bloom in bright light as well, but they can take bright light, medium light, or low light, as you can see right here. If this plant doesn't live in your low light situation, nothing will. In the wintertime, you can let them dry out about 75% between watering. This one isn't ready to be watered yet. You can see how there's wet soil still on there. In the summertime, you can let them dry out like 50% in between watering. And remember to thoroughly soak them. Right here, I'm showing you, I use granule fertilizer throughout the year, but use whatever's best for your lifestyle. When I repot them in 75% cactus soil and 25% houseplant.
Today's plant tip. Today we're going to talk about browning leaves. Brown leaves can occur from an overexposure to direct sunlight, burning the leaves, low humidity, overly dry soil, or an excess of minerals like fluoride that can be found in most tap water. If only the tip of your plant is turning brown, use a pair of scissors to cut along the browned edge. If an entire leaf is browned, you should remove it from the plant. Once you finish pruning your plant, make sure you give it a good watering. For this large corn plant and our bird of paradise, we like to pop them in the shower and give them a nice soak.
Hey plant peeps, is this you? Is this your plant? Let's look at that for just a second. Do you see how deep in the pot it is? Do you see how the leaves are translucent and kind of turning downwards? Do you see how much organic matter is in that soil? That's a no-no all the way around. When your plants are planted deeply in the pot, they don't get a lot of air circulation. You really only want to be about ½ inch to an inch from the rim of the pot. The leaves being translucent and turned downwards is typically a sign of both overwatering and definitely not getting enough light. Your plant should get anywhere between 6 to 8 hours of bright light, or you need a grow light. If the soil is too organic, it might lead to overwatering. That's why those leaves kind of look translucent. So adding more grit is really important. Now the great news is you get to go buy another one and look at what you've learned. That one's probably gonna die.
I work with houseplants for a living, and girl, I'm tired of seeing it. Their leaves are dusty. They're dusty and they're not getting the amount of light they should be getting. We have to fix this. It's true that new leaves tend to be a little bit more glossy, and then the older leaves, we still love them, but you know, they're just not gonna be ever quite this shiny. But regardless, we have got to get that dust off because it does not rain in your house. You're gonna get your spray bottle. If you add a neem oil concentrate to it, even better. Then you're gonna go and then a little to yourself too, maybe. Very important, you need to hold the underside of the leaf and then take a cloth, preferably microfiber, but I don't have one today. And you're just gonna gently dust The leaves. It's very important to hold the backside of the leaf or else the whole leaf might come off. That would be sad, wouldn't it?
Are you about to buy your first houseplant? I work at the largest retail greenhouse in Denver. Let me give you 5 tips. Tip number 1, don't buy a teeny tiny plant. Or to take care of a juvenile plant if you don't know what you're doing. Buy a more established plant to start with. Tip number 2, you're more likely to overwater your plant than underwater your plant. For the most part, you're going to let your houseplants dry out. Tip number 3, immediately treat your plant with a granulated systemic upon bringing it home so that you are preemptively treating your plant for any kind of diseases or pest issues it might have. Tip number 4, always check the entirety of the plant before buying it. Look at the leaves, look at the roots. It should all look very uniform. Start with an already really nice plant. Don't buy those rescue plants that are 50% off. Those aren't for you, maybe a more advanced person. Number 5, whether that plant might not survive and it might be an experiment, but you need to keep trying.
So you want to have houseplants, but you keep killing them. Let's start with some basics. Always get a pot with a hole. I don't care how fucking cute that pot is, Stephanie. It's important for drainage. You also recommend terracotta for everything. With the teacot hole combo, you'll never get root rot again. Teacot hole. Teacot again for the win, because you'll learn the weight. You'll be like, oh, that's a packed pot. Teacot hole. Or you'll be like, oh, I need to water that. Teacot hole. Leave it there for today. Maybe this is like tips 1 of 8,000. I don't fucking know. But holes are a must. Of course, there are ways to do it without a hole, but it's just not worth the grief it'll cost you. So you want to learn about Marimo moss balls. Actually, not moss, they're an algae. Don't eat them. Do not put them in direct sunlight. They're little baby bottom lake dwellers from Japan, okay? You're gonna need a raglet for what's next. Take them to your local sink. Clean the sink, you dump. Now get that cold water streaming. A lot of that. Make sure it's cold for everybody. Plop them. Bloop, 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 bloop. Bloop. Refill. And line them up by size so they know.
I was a bad plant mom. The pot I had my bird of paradise in had good drainage, but I put it inside a decorative pot, and that pot didn't have any drainage, and I overwatered the plant, and it couldn't actually drain out, so it was sitting in old stale water and starting to get root rot. So here's what I did. I washed the roots and leaves off with water. I soaked the plant in a pot of water with a 10:1 hydrogen peroxide mixture for 2 hours. I then hosed the plant off again and put it back in water to sit overnight so I can repot it tomorrow now that the roots are clean and hydrated.
If you're buying some expensive dream plant online, I want to explain the difference between top and mid cuttings. So with a top cutting, you're not really impacting the plant. You cut right below the top of the node. It's going to keep growing from the same growth point. When you buy a mid cutting, the plant needs to activate a whole new growth point. That's why they produce smaller leaves and take longer to produce new ones.
Lucky Bamboo Care. These plants are great for beginners. If you're growing it in water, all you have to do is stick it in a jar, make sure that the roots are always covered. Lucky Bamboo likes indirect sunlight. These are kept in a northern window. Just change the water out about twice a month to avoid algae. The most unfortunate part about these is they are toxic to cats and dogs.
Here's how to take care of the spider plant, a super cool plant. First things first, they're going to need bright light. They need to see a real nice wide view of the sky, especially when you have a plant that's variegated like this. The white parts are not photosynthesizing, so you have to make sure that you're maximizing the efficiency of the green parts. I like to repot them when the roots are coming out of the bottom drainage holes. However, they do really well pot bound also and tend to produce more babies in my experience this way. If you're going to repot, I like to use a 1:1 ratio of houseplant soil mixed in with cactus soil so they can drain pretty well. I like to fertilize with just a general purpose fertilizer during the spring and summer months. That's when they're fastest growing. If you want to remove these babies, just make sure the roots are about a 1/2 inch long before you take them off and then just plant them up.